Today I'm going to show you how to use a aquatic weed rake to rake weeds out of a lake, pond, or canal. This is a commercial weed rake, 5 foot long, and it's got a 5-foot extension, and you've got a weed rake. Okay. Then you come over here and you'll see that you grab the handle in the back, you reach out, you push it down, and you pull it across the bottom of the canal, lake, or the area beside your dock. You lift it up out of the water onto land, and then you just shake it, and the weeds come off. If they don't come off right away, just take your finger and run it down the inside track, and they'll come off. Now the other thing you can do with this, take this thing apart, because you can only reach out 10 feet with this. So you take this extension off, and you have an eye bolt that goes through the weed rake. I always put it from the bottom up. So you put the eye bolt on, tighten the bolt down, then tie a rope to it. These are 50-foot, 1/4 inch nylon ropes. Okay. Then you take your rake, take your rope, make sure it's not tangled up, and tie it around your waist. Then there's a little rubber knob. Put that over the end of it so you don't cut yourself or the water doesn't get it down inside of it or whatever. Make sure you're not stepping on your rope. And you take and you throw it out as far as you can. Now you might say, well, why'd you tie it to your waist? Well, tie it to something. You don't have to tie it to your waist. Because if you got a knot in the rope or something, the rope and everything will go out in the lake or the pond or the canal, and you'll lose it. You get a lot of weeds. If you got weeds out there. And then you shake it and get them off. Okay? Now, we've got a lot of weeds on the surface of the canal right now. And I'm going to show you how you get rid of those, because if you throw the rake out there, the rake's going to sink to the bottom and it's going to go underneath those weeds. So you come over here and you get your float. You put your float on top of your rake, not on the bottom. Do it tight, otherwise you'll lose your float. Throw it out. You see it floats on top, and it's pulling all the weeds that are on the surface in. Are you going to get them all every time? No, but it does a lot better job than having the rake go underneath the weeds and then miss them. So all of that was on the surface. Okay? So you do it many times as you want. Check your float every once in a while and make sure that the straps are still tight. These rakes with the accessories cost about $105. You can buy them online. There's a bunch of different types of rakes that you can buy. Don't get the ones that cut off the weeds at the bottom and let them float up. You got to have something to pull the weeds out if you cut them off. Or if you're dragging them and they break off, just like I showed you here. These are the top level of the weeds that float on the top. Your boat props cut them up. They're floating around the lake. This allows you to pull them out of the water relatively easily. Now, what if you don't want to pay $110 for a rake? Well, there's another option. And this is what I used for several years before we invested in weed rakes. So, get a regular garden rake. You buy some 1/4 inch, 50-foot nylon rope. You drill a hole in the end of your rake. Pretty simple. Tie it on, just like you do when you're tying onto the eye bolt. So I'm going to show you, this works just as good as the other rake. The difference is, you take a look at the size of the heads, the weed rake that I bought is more than 2 times longer than a regular garden rake, right? Just tie it around myself and you throw it out as far as you want. You can see I almost lost all my rope. If I hadn't had it tied around me, it would have probably gone out. Now I'm throwing that about 40 feet out. Works the same way. Just shake it and it comes off. Okay? Now, if you buy a weed rake like this with the accessories, you get the float. You use a garden rake, you don't get a float with it. So what can you use? Well, what I used was a swimming noodle. You can buy them at the dollar store. You can get them at the flea market or yard sales. Cut it to the length you want. Strap it across the top of the rake. And it'll float and pull out the weeds too. Now, how do you strap it? You don't have Velcro straps. Well, you could buy them if you want. Or you could just get a couple large zip ties. Use the zip ties to tie around the thing. Okay, now I'm not going to cut my grandkid's noodle off for this demonstration. It works the same way, and your cost is minimal. So if you got any questions, don't call me, look at the video again. These are the weeds that I raked out of the canal yesterday. I've got 2 wheelbarrows full. I'm going to take and compost them over the winter and put them in my garden next year and let you know how it does.